A lot of people just don't know that they are experiencing abuse, even if they are smack dab in the middle of it. Abuse in any form, especially repeated exposure, is incredibly traumatic. Depending on duration and intensity, it can result in a myriad of psychological issues, including depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder, and often have physical manifestations as well. June is also PTSD Awareness Month, so we're kicking it off here taking a look at a very common form of abuse which can cause PTSD. What we're looking at today is narcissistic and psychological abuse. Most people that experience this kind of abuse don't even realize what is happening and what it is doing to them until they are so beat down their perspective on the world and sense of self and worth is completely decimated, much less how to change it and rebuild. Psychological abuse is so destructive and comes out in every facet of your life, the invisible wound. It is much like water torture. One or a few doesn't do much, but drop after drop in time, it slowly erodes away your self and sanity. What makes it more insidious and confusing is that it usually comes from someone that is supposed to love you. A spouse, a significant other, and especially family. And it is extremely difficult to break away from that tangled web. Generally, people have the idea of narcissists, where the term comes from, but they think of it more like Vanity Smurf. I just love myself so much. Look at that gorgeous creature. That is not really the right idea. Someone with narcissistic personality disorder needs narcissistic supply. This means praise. Oh, you are so great, smart, amazing. They like to appear as though they are really wonderful, fine, upstanding individuals of the community, or often fairy godmothers. They will also often donate a lot of money to charitable foundations, especially if it's not anonymous. But it also means that they will just as easily get it negatively. Basically, they get off on hurting you. They enjoy watching people suffer. Narcissists also need to control everything, including and especially those close to them. Any deviation from their plan for you will result in some type of punishment. A narcissist also has little to no empathy or genuine emotion, which can be extremely difficult to detect as most of them could win an Oscar and will easily play the sad victim to get you to feel pity for their bad behavior. They often change history to make themselves look either better or a complete victim, and avoiding responsibility. Every story has to be, I am so great, or I was so wronged, even the smallest thing. A narcissist has a strong sense of entitlement that they are better than other people, so quite often they tend to be racist or classist, or anyist for that matter. The world owes them, and you owe them especially. Narcissists frequently deflect any wrongdoing by putting it off on someone else or upping you on the hurt. For example, if you bring up a behavior that hurt you, they will say that it hurts them more deeply, that you feel that way, or someone else hurt them much more deeper, and that is why. But no apologies, of course. Narcs genuinely do not apologize. If they do, it's because they think you're going to leave and their game will be over. Narcissistic personality disorder is very undiagnosed, and narcs do not seek treatment because they do not believe that there is anything wrong with them and everything wrong with the rest of the world, and especially you if you're in a relationship with them. A lot of narcissistic tactic can be recognized just because when you hear it, you say, who the hell says that to somebody? Or, that doesn't even make sense. The double bind was originally described in the 1950s by Gregory Bateson as two or more conflicting messages that cause emotional distressing dilemma. For example, you will get punished if you do this, or you will get punished if you don't do it. Another example would be, you must do this because you have to. but because you want to. My personal favorite variance of this is you must lovely willingly because you have to. There is no real when to any of it. Gaslighting comes from stage play Gaslight, turned into a film in the late 30s and 40s. It refers to a particularly malicious strategy of manipulations, trying to disorient a target, and in turn make them question their own perceptions of reality, memory, and sanity. Sometimes they will flat out say you're crazy, but more often appear concerned that you need to be on medication or need to seek help or therapy because you're not seeing things right and you are confused by all the inconsistencies in the narc stories and lies. Many narcs will also try to convince you that you are too sensitive and overreacting. Even when you become aware that you are being gaslit, you still question if you are doing the right thing or if you remembered it right, or you're overreacting. It is a very effective technique indeed. Isolating targets is very important to an NPD because if you have verification that their behavior is not quite right, it doesn't work as well. Supporting people that speak up and say anything about the abusive behaviors are hastily and brutally told to mind their own business and not to come around anymore, while the target gets an earful about what a jerk so-and-so is and makes all kind of big deal about them or communicating with them further. Narcissists tend to impose an identity on you that they want you to have. Their manipulations are carefully guiding you to be the perfect son, daughter, significant other, etc. for them that can never possibly be achieved. If the narc is a parent, they expect you to be a mini-me. They will berate and shame any behavior or choices that do not line up with their idea of what you should be. Narcs will punish their targets for not conforming to their agenda. Punishment can be anything from withdrawal of affection, ignoring an abandonment or threat of it, to actual beating or threatening a beating. And then there is shaming. Shaming is a huge tactic for narcs. It simultaneously implants the doubt of your own morality and code of ethics, makes you think about how you can serve the narc better so that they are not upset, and it also creates an inner critic that is like the miniature voice of the narc in your head, speaking on their behalf when they're not even there. What does it say? You are not enough. You will never be enough. You are selfish. You are a failure. You are a whore. You are an asshole. You are worthless. No one will ever love you like I do. A lot of times a narc will come to you in the guise of trying to help you, but actually they're just tearing you down. One of my favorite narc quotes of all time, in all sincerity to help me somehow, was, "This is why people don't like you." Given frequency and duration, this form of abuse can cause PTSD. Especially with a parent or caregiver in a situation in which that was all you ever knew, and you cannot escape. This can be referred to as developmental trauma disorder, or more commonly being referred to as complex PTSD. Every facet of becoming a normal human was severely disrupted and traumatized. Simply, you never knew any better. You had no safe base of reality. Mother is the name for God in the lips and hearts of all little children. Imagine starting out in life with God hating you. What are the effects of narcissistic abuse? Lack of self-worth, loss of identity, doubting your sanity, lack of personal boundaries, depression, isolation, anxiety, insomnia. To the symptoms that are more PTSD in nature: catastrophic thinking, nightmares, night terrors, sleepwalking, emotional flashbacks, suicidal thought, panic attacks. It can also lead to physical manifestations such as nausea, gastrointestinal issues, alopecia or loss of hair, weight gain or weight loss, eating disorders, fibromyalgia, and Raynaud's syndrome, just to name a few. A lot of these symptoms can clear with time and distance from contact with the narcissist. However, if work isn't done on yourself and you do not recognize the patterns that you keep repeating from the conditioning that you've had, chances are very likely you will just get another narcissist in your life. How does a person let that happen to them? Overt narcissists are easier to spot because they are pretty blatant. However, people still get involved with them because they are the boss, or they are successful and seem to have everything or something you are willing to sacrifice some of yourself to obtain. And they often do have a lot of these things because they have been so successful and they have no need to hide themselves to get their narcissistic supply. Covert or fragile narcissists are more difficult to spot because outwardly they can be very charming. Once you get to know them and get entwined into their lives, the manipulations and head games begin. It can happen to anyone, regardless of intelligent or being streetwise. It often starts as a feeling that something isn't quite right, but you can't just put your finger on it. It is important to understand that many people that end up in abusive situations, especially repeatedly, more often than not were conditioned that way from childhood. Having one or both parents or caregiver with narcissistic personality programs and conditions a young developing mind to a world in which they are worth nothing, with zero skill about how to have a healthy sense of self, personal boundaries, how to say no, and recognize when someone else's behavior is not conducive to a healthy relationship. I hope this video has helped you to understand a little bit more about narcissistic and psychological abuse and how it affects people in their entire lives, and that you will be an advocate in helping stop this heinous torture. Thank you for listening. Namaste.